Dalion, thank you. My relatives, it's really good to be here with you all on this important occasion. Really an important thing for people in Denver to pay attention to. I want to say thank you to Craig Bergsgaard for putting the event on, and to his publicist Amy for all the work she did in organizing. We're grateful to both of them and to the public library here for putting the event on and hosting us. There are a couple of things on my mind as we begin today. And I think the first one is that I had really hoped that we would have at least one Cheyenne, if not a couple of Cheyennes on the panel, and I'd made some recommendations, and who knows why, but there are two American Indians on the panel who will have to do double duty and at least try to express something of what might be a Cheyenne perspective on this event, even though as a non-Cheyenne, I can only speak out of a certain general sense of American Indianness. I'm Wajaji, Osage Nation, Eagle Clan, the Earth Division of my people, and I speak out of that life experience. Wajaji, that's what white people call Osage. And thanks to an email from Dr. Machoan here to my right about historiography a little bit today, because I think that's a critical issue. How we tell history makes history.
You probably know Richard Drennan's book, Facing West, Metaphysics of Indian Hating. He talks about the phenomenon of that, about how we sometimes describe historical figures like Shivington as an aberration or an anomaly in order to forgive him somehow, or John Evans, or William Byers, or all of the people who are here locally who incited the Sand Creek Massacre, after whom there are still dozens and dozens of streets and monuments and mountains honoring them. And what does that say about Shivington and our recollection of him? Because we have to remember that in 1883, Shivington was invited back into the city and hailed as a hero, and in fact made sheriff of this city. So he must have not been on too bad of a list, because he came back and was a fairly prominent historical figure.
There were all these stories about how wonderful the West was and the excitement and killing Indians and all these things that happened. And there's a lot of artwork to that effect and a lot of illustration. So as we get further into the panel and we talk about contemporary Western artwork, you know, I think there's a lot of good, but definitely a lot of negativity that still happens in the portrayal that we see in what is thought of as Western art.
I'd like to add on briefly, and like the others before me, quickly thank Craig Bergstrand for hosting and for giving us the proximate medium for this discussion today. But both George Tinker and Glenn Morris have spoken about the concepts of manifest destiny, the way that they're held up in iconic culture, both locally and nationally in historiography today and in decades past. And I want to talk just real briefly about that. This concept of manifest destiny is easy to dismiss as something that's just a political theory, and it kind of dresses it up and it provides almost a euphemism for what became a pretty dirty, nasty outcome that followed the lines, something of what we used also on various portions of the 19th century to defend slavery, to defend the Confederate cause and the lost cause and the democratic redemption, lots of different causes that were also dressed up in euphemistic terms. But really what it is it goes something like the puritanical or evangelical Christian genre of the day talked in terms of social progression. Later on it was articulated in the United States by a man named Lewis Henry Morgan in the post-Civil War era in his works, but it was already present in what was called the Scottish genre of the emergent, very emergent social sciences. But it was accepted to largest degree by the roughly educated American public. You know, whether they knew it or not, that's what was accepted.
Great day, and thank all of you for being here, and especially want to recognize the Denver Public Library Western History Department, where those of you interested in this will find original documents, maps, George Bent's letters upstairs. So we're very lucky to have here in Denver such a magnificent organization. Lessons learned at Sand Creek. There have been some lessons, but it's an important thing to keep discussing. One thing I learned from my esteemed colleague Glenn Morris is he planted aspen trees. Do you remember that? By the statue on the war trail.
And you wrote a column in the Denver Post about it.
And celebrating this peace gesture, this reconciliation gesture on that issue. Professor George Tinker here in the Methodist Church have paid for Reverend Chivington's sins to the tune of $30,000.
50, I thought.
Say a little more than that.
Yeah, to help.
But don't confuse me with the Methodists.
You're all clear on that.
I've been working as a consultant with the National United Methodist Church on the issue of Sand Creek and how Methodists will deal with that, because Colonel Chivington was Reverend Chivington. He had, like John Evans, was a faithful Methodist, only Chivington was Methodist clergy.
Many of you know that I think the story of the Civil War statue that Glenn Morris referred to on the west side of the Capitol, and that's a fascinating tale to me. When Representative Martinez, was it Dave, from Adams County, wanted to strike out Sand Creek, listed as a battle. And at that point, a very interesting thing happened. I think Dave Hallis and the Historical Society, he's with us, had the good sense to say, hold it, let's consult with the Cheyenne and Arapaho, and particularly the descendants of Sand Creek, and see what they have to say about it. And they said, don't erase Sand Creek. We want you to remember that you put it up there as a battle, and there we came to, I think, a very constructive solution of having those descendants put up their own plaque and their interpretation underneath that. But when we knock down Saddam Hussein, when we knock down whoever the current bad guy is, we erase history. It's important, I think, to leave those statues up to remember that viewpoint. And getting into a little more trouble here maybe, I did want to say that in teaching Sand Creek, I try to get students to say, where did he come from, to understand that he wasn't the devil incarnate, that he did a few good things in his life, like setting up Sunday schools, founding churches. He also, at the Battle of Glorieta Pass, defeated the Texans. He stopped Texans from invading Colorado.
I'd just like to acknowledge, when we're finished here, those of you who haven't, walk out this door between here and the Denver Art Museum and look at the art by Edgar Heber Birds. That's a piece of art that hopefully can begin, or has begun, this process, Craig, that your sculpture also extends. Because ultimately today, I think that we're here to talk about what's the future look like? Is reconciliation possible? Is justice possible? Is peace possible? And Heber Bird's sculpture out there called The Wheel does address exactly this incident from the perspective of, how long has it been there? 5 years? 2006, I think. And so he began that process. And really, if you study what he's doing, those parts of the wheel out there are the sacred tree, aligned with the summer solstice, telling a story of this place. And the inscription on the wall on the Denver Art Museum there is in Tsitsitas, in Cheyenne, that the people will always come back here. That's his vision in art, which goes to the Dr. Colorado's point earlier. And let me say, it's an honor to be on the panel with Tom for the first time, I think, and all the rest of the panelists as well. But the point about the, and Dave Hollis, it's good to see you again. The point about the plaque at the Civil War Monument at the Capitol, and what that means. And do we need one on the Pioneer Monument now? Kit Carson up there every day. I see that guy there waving. And that was supposed to be an Indian.